Ethiopia and the United States have enjoyed cordial government-to-government and people-to-people relations for over a century now. The countries are valuable partners in various matters of common interests, particularly in the fight against terrorism. Ethiopia's leading role in pacifying the Horn of Africa, a region of vital national security interest for the United States, makes it an all-time ally for the US. The recurrent high-level visits between the two nations have been contributing to their ever-growing relations. With the intent to further their ties, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson paid an official visit to Ethiopia the previous week, starting Wednesday. The Secretary embarked on his first state visit to Africa with a stopover in Addis, signifying Ethiopia's growing importance to the U.S. During his stay here, Tillerson met Ethiopian senior government officials, including Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn, and deliberated on ways to beef up their socio-economic and political relations. The countries at the juncture also agreed to advance their trade and investment partnership to a higher level. After a thorough discussion with Ethiopian Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Worqeneh Gebeyehu, Secretary Tillerson briefed local and international media in the capital, Addis Ababa. His brief featured a handful of matters, including the Ethio-US relations, Ethiopia's current political situation, and its prominent role in the region and beyond.
And I'm quite excited to be in Ethiopia. This is my first visit, and certainly this was an important place to start my trip as Secretary of State to the continent, in large measure because of the more than 100-year diplomatic relationship between Ethiopia and the United States. And it's been an enduring relationship. As the foreign minister described it, an all-weather relationship that even when storm clouds gather, we remain friends and have always worked through challenges together. The United States and Ethiopia are long-standing partners. I was glad to have the opportunity to exchange views with the foreign minister on many areas of mutual interest that we share. We recognize and share concerns expressed by the government about incidents of violence and loss of life. We do firmly believe the answer is greater freedom for people, not less. Giving people greater freedom gives them a greater investment in this democracy as well. And so while we appreciate the government's responsibility to maintain control and not allow violence to break out and harm innocent people as well who may become victims of violence, it is important that the country move on past the state of emergency as quickly as possible. We hope that can occur. We recognize the transition that is underway in Ethiopia, the first ever voluntary transfer of power. And I view this as a very positive symbol of the strength of this very young democracy in Ethiopia, a peaceful transition of power. And we encourage the Ethiopian people as well to maintain patience, maintain support for your government through this change, through this transition, but also in pursuing this journey of democracy, which takes time and effort. Democracy is not easy. It takes a lot of work. But staying with it, lasting change will come about, and to not resort to violence. Violence is simply never a solution. I was able to raise these concerns because of this very, very strong relationship that exists between Ethiopia and the United States, and we share so many values as partners. We want Ethiopia as a country to succeed and prosper, and we're confident that they will succeed and prosper, providing many, many economic benefits, not just for the Ethiopian people, but for the neighboring countries in Africa and ultimately for U.S. business interest as well. We welcome the proactive steps that have already been taken with the release of thousands of prisoners, including journalists and political leaders, and we encourage additional concrete measures to allow greater political freedom of expression. As the seat of the African Union, Ethiopia plays a critical and significant role in leadership in the region, throughout the continent and the world, and we appreciate its efforts to further our mutual goals of peace and prosperity on the continent. This is especially true of our shared security interest as the largest contributor. Ethiopia is the largest contributor to UN peacekeeping operations. They play a vital role in AMISOM in Somalia, as well as peacekeeping efforts in Sudan and South Sudan. We have shared treasure together in trying to advance the cause of peace, and we have shared blood together in this advancement of the cause of peace, and we acknowledge that. Ethiopia's influence in supporting the security of Somalia and Djibouti are particularly important at this time to keep global commerce routes open. These routes through the Red Sea affect billions of people around the world in terms of their economic stability. Ethiopia has a vibrant economy, but there's a lot of potential that is yet to be realized in Ethiopia's economy, and we think there are great opportunities for U.S. private sector engagement in supporting economic growth, creating jobs for these many millions of young people who are working hard, getting an education in school. Now they want to have their opportunity. Ethiopia is becoming a critical hub for intercontinental traffic for people traveling from the United States, with more and more nonstop connections for Americans to travel to Addis Ababa and then make connections to other parts of the continent. I think this is going to promote a great deal of interest in Africa and in Ethiopia. You know, there are still economic reform measures that are necessary, not just in Ethiopia, but in other parts of Africa as well, to lower some of the barriers to investment, create greater certainty to outside business investors, strong rule of law, good regulatory processes. The more privatization of holdings as possible creates opportunities. But we understand this is all part of governments in transitions, economies in transitions, but that's what we encourage is what are the areas of opportunity where we believe there will be strong interest in U.S. companies to participate. I commented on in our discussions what we understand soon to be completed, a continental free trade agreement, and we believe stimulating intracontinental economic activity and trade from countries on the continent is actually going to create even more opportunity for inbound foreign investment and certainly U.S. business interest in wanting to be a part of the intracontinental trading system as well. Similarly with the civil aviation agreement that's being negotiated through the African Union, that once again is going to just tie the continent more closely together, more efficiently. All of these are very positive conditions for outside businesses to want to participate and be a part of. So I think a number of very positive steps are being taken, and I think it's really ensuring that American businessmen and investors understand what are the opportunities here. And we had discussions about how to do that as well. Recently creating an American Chamber of Commerce, Ethiopian Chamber of Commerce partnership is going to be very important to exposing American businesses to the opportunities here. So I think there's a lot of it in front of us yet to come, and as the conditions are created and some of these pieces come into place, I think American business and private sector interest is going to grow in Ethiopia. And we discussed the United States is eager to help Ethiopia liberalize its economy. We think it's going to bring great opportunity and attract many business interests as they continue the process of reform and liberalization, strengthen its judicial and commercial institutions, and assist in humanitarian emergencies here and throughout the region, including the almost 1 million refugees that currently reside in Ethiopia. And we need to recognize Ethiopia's generosity in hosting those refugees. The United States is a long-term friend and partner of Ethiopia. We look forward to working with you as the people of Ethiopia seek greater peace, democracy, and prosperity, all of which we know you will succeed in achieving.
Rex Tillerson also took time at the AU headquarters in the capital, where he conferred with AU Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat. The officials have dwelt on issues including the implementation of the free trade agreement, peace and security, and capacity building.
The African Union truly is a force for good, and we're grateful to the African Union's role in seeking solutions to help this continent move towards greater stability. Recognizing health security also advances national security, economic development, political stability. We applaud the Africa Centers for Disease Control, which has been quite successful in tracking and responding to disease outbreaks on the continent. We look forward to continuing our close cooperation with the African Union on this important initiative, and we're currently in very important discussions to update our joint memorandum of understanding to guide our future efforts, our collaborative efforts in that regard. On trade, we also support the African Union's economic regional integration efforts to lower intra-trade barriers on the continent, boost more intra-regional trade, which we know has been a central goal of the negotiations around the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which we are quite supportive of. We look forward to engaging further with the African Union once that agreement is in place on how this will also promote greater participation of U.S. private sector business interest as well. I mentioned to Chairperson Faki that we appreciate the African Union's very strong statements made on South Sudan at the recent AU summit. We truly call on all parties to abide by the cessation of hostilities and be open to compromise for the good of the South Sudanese people. We urge the AU and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development to keep their maximum efforts in moving forward to push for a solution to this conflict for the good of the people in South Sudan.
Following the visit, U.S. Ambassador to Ethiopia and U.S. Ambassador to the African Union held a press conference at the U.S. Embassy in Addis Ababa. The ambassadors gave brief reflections on two lessons stay in Addis in view of both the Ethio-U.S. and Afro-U.S. relations.
Really excited about the Secretary's trip to Ethiopia. It came as part of a continuum of a very long-standing, very deep, very rich, very multifaceted bilateral relationship. The intent of the visit was essentially to strengthen that partnership, to build upon it, to find new ways that we can be mutually reinforcing. In that regard, the Secretary spoke with senior Ethiopian officials, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, about areas of shared interests, talked about the security partnership, which is extremely dynamic and important, and there are political as well as security dimensions to that in terms of supporting Ethiopia's essential role in promoting stability in the region. Spoke about economic growth and development and the opportunities that creates for both nations, and building economic ties, which again are long-standing and deep. And of course, the Secretary was here at a very interesting moment in Ethiopia's political life, and so gave him a very good opportunity to hear from Ethiopian leadership about the transition of the Prime Minister, about movement toward greater democratic space. Again, this all came in the context of a very rich and deep partnership, and in that context it was very supportive, very constructive, and very candid dialogue. The economic dimension of the relationship is a vital, dynamic, and growing one, and one that we are looking very much at ways that we can further strengthen. As you know, the Secretary has quite an extraordinary business background in his own right, so he brought private sector perspective to bear in a way that I think was very fruitful in these discussions. The Ethiopian government, as you noted, has had an extraordinary run of growth over the past 12 or so years, many of those years averaging 10% or more a year, becoming one of the world's largest, quickest, fastest growing economies in the world. That creates opportunities for Ethiopia. It also creates opportunities for U.S. business and for investment, and it also is really important to helping address the needs and the aspirations of the Ethiopian people. So we see our engagement on the economic front as being multifaceted, as our broader relationship is, and we also see enormous opportunity for U.S. commercial engagement that's mutually beneficial and reinforcing as well. So we spoke a lot about various sectors in which that is the case. Certainly, we have a very highly valued relationship with Ethiopian Airlines that both parties were happy to speak about. We talked in great depth about the power sector, the fact that the U.S. has extraordinary expertise and commercial success in developing renewable energy sectors. We mentioned the Tulumoye and other thermo projects, as well as hydro and other projects. So there was really a broad-ranging discussion. We also discussed tourism and the mutually reinforcing benefits of having more people go back and forth between our two countries, the economic benefits of that, but also creating greater connections and understanding. So it was really quite a broad-ranging conversation, but the upshot of it was that There's enormous U.S. interest in helping Ethiopia's economic growth and playing both commercial and developmental roles in that regard, and that we see lots of opportunities to do that going forward.
We acknowledge that the United States and the African Union have very solidly shared goals to how to achieve a stable and prosperous Africa. And the United States views our own security and economic prosperity as very linked to this continent. It is already a rather significant market of 1 billion people, and by 2050 even more significant still. There are a variety of security challenges on the continent that we are happy to partner with Africa and the AU on efforts to counter those. There's some fabulous discussion about regional integration and how that creates future good opportunities for trade with the U.S.
Apart from Rex Tillerson, foreign ministers of Russia and United Arab Emirates were in Ethiopia last week for similar state visits here. Many believe that these high-level trips are indications of Ethiopia's growing significance in the international diplomacy.
Our country's role in international politics is growing, and we have become a prominent actor in the international diplomacy. And it shows that we have begun to assume a responsible role in the politics in the making in the international arena. So it is a continuation of the narration of the fact that Ethiopia is rising in economy. Ethiopia has become stable and peaceful for more than 2 decades now, and it makes use of this stability and rising economy to play a responsible role in the international politics. These are strategic countries that play a strategic role in international politics. United States of America and Russia are quite key actors, both economically, politically, in the global politics, and they are also pretty much important countries to us. We have very good productive bilateral relation with these 2 countries. This visits by the 2 foreign ministers have taken our strong bilateral relations to the next step, and it has in a way paved road for further cooperation in multilateral issues with those countries.
As part of his African tour, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson had also a stopover in neighboring Djibouti and Kenya and the West African states, Chad and Nigeria. Just after his trip to Africa, Rex Tillerson was replaced by a new Secretary of State, Mike Poempo, who was the director of the CIA.